you guys know Papoose popped up with Claressa for a check at her fight. He was rapping. He got paid to do that. He wasn't coming out there for free. Okay? And so he's trying to get his name.
What just hit the timeline is not regular celebrity chatter. This is the kind of allegation that makes people pause, lower their voices, and start questioning how far manipulation can go before someone's life is permanently changed. Social media is in full reaction mode right now after Tasha K put Claressa Shields and Papoose into a narrative that completely shifts how this situation is being viewed. According to what's being alleged, this is not about casual attraction or two people enjoying attention. The claim centers on strategy, timing, and a move that could lock Papoose into a future he may not fully understand until it becomes irreversible. Tasha K claims Claressa Shields, while standing at the height of her boxing career, may be following a calculated personal plan meant to bind Papoose to her emotionally, legally, and biologically. That is where the concern starts to set in. If even part of these claims hold weight, this would not be romance developing naturally. It would be pressure framed as passion. Sources say Claressa's public relationship with Papoose did not slowly unfold. It moved fast. Trips stacked close together, constant appearances, public support on display, and non-stop visibility. Each step appeared quicker than the last, while one major issue remains unresolved. Papoose is still legally married to Remy Ma. That detail alone has people questioning everything. Online reactions have been divided. Some supporters say Claressa is simply confident and genuinely in love. Others believe she is thinking several moves ahead and playing a long game. There are also those who view this as a familiar situation where emotions are used to rush decisions and permanence enters before clarity has time to catch up. What adds to the tension is the timing. Career momentum is strong. The relationship is escalating rapidly, and conversations about the future are happening simultaneously. Allegedly, all of it is lining up in a way that feels too precise to ignore. Once a child enters the picture, nothing remains casual. Careers slow down, power dynamics shift, and options quietly disappear. That is why the question spreading across the internet remains simple. Is Claressa Shields acting purely out of love? Or is Papoose moving toward a situation he may not be able to reverse? What is making this situation intensify is not just the allegation itself, but how closely the timing aligns. When relationships accelerate during peak career moments, questions tend to follow and they rarely fade quickly.
Pap was, of course, stepping out. You know, rumor has it, and it's not even a rumor no more because she came out to confirm it after Papoose had sent me a cease and desist saying that I was lying and making it up, that Remy was being allegedly beat by him. And I'm like, why are you sending me a cease and desist and then your wife only comes out to confirm it that you put hands on her and pushed her in the pool or something like that? So I told y'all that that shit was done. Black love no longer exists on TV. Okay? It exists, but it just don't exist on TV. Okay? So as long as that love and hip hop check was coming through, it existed.
According to what Tasha K has shared, the public relationship between Claressa Shields and Papoose may not be as spontaneous as it appears. The claim is not that feelings are fake. It is that intention may be guiding the pace more than emotion. Sources say Claressa Shields is at a rare point in her career with momentum, visibility, and control all happening at once. Every decision matters. Yet attention appears to be shifting toward personal permanence rather than professional expansion. That contrast has raised eyebrows. Insiders allege this is not about slowing down, but about locking things in before unresolved realities surface. Once permanence enters the picture, power dynamics change immediately. Publicly, Claressa and Papoose present as unified. Events together, trips together, and appearances that feel planned rather than accidental. Social media content shows comfort and certainty. But observers point out how quickly this image formed and how little space existed for anything else. According to people close to the situation, the relationship did not gradually develop. It escalated. Speed matters, especially when one person remains legally tied elsewhere. That is where Remy Ma's name returns to the conversation, quietly but significantly. The marriage is not officially closed, paperwork has not been finalized, and legal ties still remain beneath every public display, leaving many people asking the same unanswered question. Why push forward this aggressively right now? That question sits at the center of everything. Online reaction has been split almost perfectly down the middle. Some fans see Claressa Shields as confident and intentional, a woman who knows exactly what she wants and refuses to apologize for it. Others feel Papoose is being pulled into something that is moving faster than his real-life situation can keep up with. Then there is a third group, the ones focused less on emotion and more on patterns. Patterns tied to fight schedules, patterns tied to talk of future breaks, patterns tied to increased emotional visibility happening at the same time. Clarity seems to be fading. That is where speculation about long-term strategy started to grow. According to Tasha K, the alleged plan is not reckless. It is calculated. The idea circulating online is that Claressa may be carefully balancing her career with personal decisions that could permanently bind Papoose to her emotionally and legally before any realistic option to step back exists. Not loudly, not suddenly, but step by step. That shift is what changed the tone. Once legal implications and confirmations entered the conversation, everything became heavier, more serious, less speculative. Observers say this is the point where silence stopped feeling neutral and started feeling intentional. If the situation were truly simple, clarity would have calmed the noise. Instead, the narratives tightened and questions multiplied. Public perception became harder to manage. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields continued to appear calm, confident, and forward-focused, publicly supportive of Papoose, comfortable in the spotlight, seemingly unaffected by the unresolved past circling underneath the present. That contrast did not go unnoticed. Confidence in moments like this can be read in two ways: either security or certainty built on leverage. Insiders suggest the emotional balance may be shifting. Claressa appears fully invested in outcomes, while Papoose is navigating a much more complicated reality that includes history, loyalty, and unfinished obligations. In situations like that, momentum usually favors the person pushing it, which brings the discussion back to permanence. Rumors online suggest future planning may already be in motion, aligned closely with career scheduling. Suggestions that after a certain number of fights, priorities could shift, that a pause might not be about rest, but about transition. If true, the pace stops looking accidental. Intention becomes harder to deny. Coincidence starts to disappear. Social media speculation intensified once that idea took hold. Supporters leaned in harder. Critics grew louder. And Remy Ma's silence added fuel to the tension because silence, when everything else is loud, becomes its own message. At this stage, the story stopped feeling like a relationship unfolding and started feeling like a strategy being executed. That reframing changed everything, because it was no longer just about Claressa Shields, Papoose, or Remy Ma. It became about optics versus reality, public performance versus private intention, and how easily one can mask the other. As this part of the story settles, one question hangs in the background. If permanence is being introduced before resolution, is this love moving forward or leverage closing the door behind someone? The most dangerous part is that the answer may not appear until reversal is no longer possible.
He's still married. And so we just want to tell Claressa this. Claressa got a bigger bag. You know, Papoose ain't making that kind of money. Let's put it out there. Remy already said he ain't got no money. She left, not him. And so I just want to know if Claressa knows if he's cheating on his wife again, like, because his other side piece, the one that does credit repair and got a BBL.
By the time the story reached its Hawaii chapter, the tone had already shifted. What once felt like momentum began to feel like pressure. What once looked celebratory started to feel declarative for those watching closely. The trip itself did not read as rest or romance to everyone. For many observers, it felt like confirmation. Confirmation before resolution. According to insiders, this was not just another vacation. It was a public signal that the relationship between Claressa Shields and Papoose had crossed into something permanent, even though the legal reality underneath had not changed. That disconnect unsettled people. When public gestures move faster than private closure, someone is always forced to adjust. Observers say that adjustment does not appear to be shared evenly here. Social media reacted instantly. Some fans praised the boldness, framing Hawaii as proof of commitment. Others paused at the timing. They questioned why such a visible escalation was necessary, while one critical chapter remained unfinished. That chapter is Remy Ma. Despite the visuals, the marriage is not legally closed. Paperwork has not been finalized. Ties still exist quietly, but firmly. That single fact reshaped how everything else was interpreted. That reminder landed sharply, not because it added new information, but because it recontextualized the entire Hawaii moment. Suddenly, the trip felt risky rather than romantic, consequential rather than affectionate. When someone is still legally connected elsewhere, every new commitment introduces friction. Emotional promises begin competing with legal obligations. And the faster the public narrative moves, the harder it becomes to slow down without consequences. Observers noticed how quickly that reality was pushed aside online. The focus returned to smiles, beaches, and captions, while the unresolved foundation remained untouched. But foundations matter, and that is where the conversation shifted from romance to leverage. According to people close to the situation, a growing imbalance started to stand out, and it was no longer easy to ignore. One side operating with peak momentum, financial strength, and independence, the other navigating a public re-entry while still connected to a past that refuses to fade quietly. That imbalance changes everything. It affects who has the freedom to walk away, who gains from permanence, and who absorbs the damage if things collapse. As that dynamic became more visible, another allegation began gaining traction, one that intensified scrutiny even further: the money. Because finances often reveal intention long before emotions ever do, insiders say. And in this case, the gap is not small. Claressa Shields is earning at a level that creates options: freedom, mobility, independence. Papoose, by contrast, is rebuilding visibility and momentum. In a space where leverage looks very different depending on position, that gap matters. When one person holds more leverage, decisions stop being equal. They become directional. That is when the next claim surfaced. That allegation did not just add drama, it introduced instability. Suddenly, Hawaii was no longer seen as a private moment. It became a collision point. Multiple narratives overlapping in the same space, under the same spotlight. If the claim is true, it suggests timelines crossing where exclusivity was assumed. If it is false, it raises another concern: why so many people found it believable in the first place. Either way, trust took a visible hit. And once trust fractures publicly, repairing it becomes nearly impossible. Observers started revisiting earlier moments with a different lens. The speed of escalation, the heavy emphasis on visibility, the way commitment appeared to be performed instead of clearly discussed. When performance starts moving faster than reality, someone is being carried by momentum rather than choice. That realization pushed the binding theory to the front of the conversation. The idea circulating online is not that affection is fake. It is that permanence may be the real objective. That emotional closeness is being reinforced with structural consequences. That the future is being shaped now in ways that quietly limit exits later. Not through force, through acceleration. And acceleration becomes powerful when one side is not ready to slow down. This is where the emotional temperature rose. Supporters framed the situation as love evolving naturally. Critics warned of manipulation. A growing group simply watched, noticing how quickly pressure replaced patience. Because patience would require clarity, and clarity has been noticeably absent, according to insiders. Behind the scenes, conversations have shifted. What once felt optional now feels expected. What once was discussed now feels assumed. And public assumptions are hard to undo without consequences. That is the trap people keep pointing to. Not one single moment, but a sequence. A sequence where public validation locks private decisions into place.
Repoed your ex-fiance's car, because she had a fiance right there in the glasses right here, to give it to Papoose. I said, what type of shit is this? How Papoose gonna accept the ex-fiance car? Like, yeah, this nice right here. This nice right here. You got some ashes on the seat and everything. But thank you, baby. It'll do. I just feel sorry for Claressa because she is really, really like thirsty over Papoose, like she won a prize. And Remy already told you he thinks he's the prize. And I'm just like, this is not giving winner behavior. This is giving desperate. This is giving, I've never had a famous guy like me before.
As this part of the story settles, the narrative reaches a dangerous balance point. The public image is ahead of the legal reality. Emotional commitments are moving faster than logistical closure. The pace is outpacing what the situation can safely absorb. That leaves one unresolved question hanging. If permanence is being pushed before resolution, who actually benefits when reality finally catches up? And who absorbs the cost? By the time the story reached this phase, the tone had shifted from speculation to strain. What once looked like momentum now carried weight. What once felt confident began to look urgent. For those watching closely, the balance inside the relationship between Claressa Shields and Papoose no longer appeared equal. It looked tilted. Observers say this is the moment when acceleration starts revealing its price. Because permanence introduced under pressure does not strengthen bonds. It tests them in public. Everything on the surface still appeared composed. Appearances continued. Support remained visible. The image of unity held steady. But online, the conversation had already changed. Viewers stopped asking what comes next. The question quietly changed to who is being cornered. That shift matters because people who feel cornered are not making free choices. According to insiders, they start making necessary ones. The emotional dynamic hardened around expectation. What began as shared excitement slowly started feeling like obligation. Conversations that once felt optional began carrying consequences. And that is when caution appeared. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly enough for anyone paying attention. The caution did not show up as conflict. It showed up as restraint. And restraint only intensified speculation. When one side appears increasingly certain about the future while the other grows guarded, it suggests decisions are being made without full agreement. That is when the idea of control entered the conversation, not as an accusation, as an implication, not proven, but visible through patterns. Patterns like how quickly commitment was framed in public. Patterns like how often permanence was emphasized while clarity remained missing. Patterns like how unresolved history was minimized instead of addressed. That interpretation split audiences instantly. It did not land as fact. It landed as a lens, a way to re-examine behavior. Confidence began to look like urgency. Urgency began to look like fear of loss. Supporters rejected that framing immediately. Critics said it explained everything. Many viewers chose neither side. They went back and re-watched earlier moments. Because if urgency is driving decisions, every action takes on a different meaning. Trips stop reading as romantic. Public posts stop feeling celebratory. Even generosity stops looking generous. Instead, everything becomes proof. Proof of loyalty, proof of commitment, proof of permanence. According to people close to the situation, proof is only demanded when reassurance is no longer enough. That is where pressure began to quietly rise. Expectations were no longer implied. They were assumed, and public assumptions leave little room for hesitation. That is dangerous, because hesitation is where consent lives. When that space disappears, momentum takes over. As pressure increased, scrutiny followed. Every overlap was questioned, every inconsistency magnified. Then, one detail surfaced that jolted the narrative entirely. Not because it shocked people, but because of what it represented. A sacrifice that crossed emotional lines. A gesture that felt less like giving and more like pleading. If accurate, it suggested the past was being dismantled to secure the future. That reframed everything. When someone starts undoing their own history to prove commitment, it implies that the commitment itself is unstable. And insecurity combined with leverage creates something far more troubling. Online reaction was immediate. Some dismissed the allegation completely. Others said it confirmed what they had sensed all along. That balance had been replaced by desperation. That is where tragedy begins to form, not as an event, but as a direction. Because tragedy does not always explode. Sometimes it unfolds quietly under applause until someone realizes they can no longer step back without losing everything. Observers noted how the narrative kept moving forward despite the discomfort, how criticism was reframed as jealousy, how questions were labeled hate, how silence from key figures only deepened suspicion. At this stage, silence stopped feeling neutral. It started feeling strategic. And strategy inside a relationship changes its nature. At this point, the allegations stopped being about romance versus negativity. They became about agency. Who holds it? Who is losing it? And who benefits from that shift? If permanence is being accelerated to stabilize uncertainty, then fear is driving the timeline. And fear is a dangerous architect. This part of the story offers no resolution. It offers a warning. When public validation replaces private agreement, consequences arrive late and hit hard. When pressure disguises itself as affection, the fallout is never shared evenly. When someone realizes too late that their future was decided faster than they could question it, apologies and explanations no longer fix the damage. The internet will eventually move on. Attention always does, but outcomes do not disappear with headlines. They surface later, in legal disputes, in emotional fallout, in lives reshaped under pressure. That leaves one unavoidable question hanging over everything. If love requires speed, sacrifice, and silence, is it really love, or is it control presented with a smile? This is the moment where the story stops feeling like gossip and starts reading like a warning unfolding in real time. Because when Tasha K introduced these allegations involving Claressa Shields and Papoose, the conversation shifted. Not toward scandal, but toward how easily love can turn into leverage. The most unsettling part is not fame, money, or public scrutiny. It is the possibility that a future is being rushed into permanence before every truth is acknowledged. If these claims hold weight, what is unfolding is not romance. It is pressure. Pressure wrapped in smiles, travel, and public unity. Pressure that does not shout. Pressure that quietly demands proof. And when proof replaces trust, betrayal does not always look like infidelity. Sometimes it looks like compliance, silence, sacrifices that go too far. If one person is being pulled forward while still legally and emotionally tied elsewhere, then someone is being forced to choose under a spotlight. That leaves no room to pause. And if control is being driven by fear rather than confidence, then balance was never present to begin with. That is how damage happens. Gradually, one decision at a time, one public moment closing a private exit, until someone wakes up realizing the life they are in was decided before they were ready to choose it. The real betrayal is not just between people. It is between image and reality, between what is shown and what is avoided. Once that line is crossed, there is no clean ending. Only consequences that surface long after the applause fades.